And they'd be willing to put all this in that.
I'm going to drink water.
Wouldn't mind. Are you going to get
I'm going to drink water. Do you want some? You want me to get...
just a tiny bit? Yeah. Let's share a bottle.
Oh, okay. I don't know if there's a bottle. Oh, they got a bottle in the car. I'll be right back. Sorry.
No, I don't want it that bad.
I was just going to go to the fountain. So she used to walk the driving back. But... Okay, then let me just go get a drink of water from the fountain.
Okay, go get your mouth. Come back. Give me some.
It's insane for anybody to plan anything because everything's exhausting. So what we were trying to do was kind of move it to some of the other months, but we've never had. We had the first one, the day we had the first meeting, we had a calendar. And if we had just gone with that, we'd have been fine. If you want to include them, that's fine. I'm in several groups, service leads.
Hi. Hello there.
I wish it was.
That's great, Josh. That's great. Can we do it soon, later?
You all right, girl? You all right?
How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah. I still use it, but I don't check it.
Okay. Do you want me to use the Hapeville.org one?
That one's messed up.
I can tell you what I use. I can just.
I know which one it is.
Okay. It was a short message.
I'll search back. Okay.
It's something that I've been putting on. I still have the original meetings and minutes from the HC. If anything, the new enough is not correct. If I have
They're back. Not so they come. Well, we can just take one. Yeah, we'll work it out. And
you can come to my house if you don't mind I think I have it somewhere. I've never been involved. By the way, my notes, so if I have to pay for that
the weather was too bad. I could have fly. Thank you, Tenny, first. Thank you. Gentlemen, lady, go up inside. Sorry. What's your home has to go?
all the public artwork will go here. Yeah, that's what we need, stuff like that.
That would be interesting. We could take a tumble off of that. She's got pizza.
I'm really sorry.
Pizza.
Yes. That's coming up. Yes.
My darling.
Jennifer, did you see what I found at the bottom of my closet?
That looked familiar.
Circa 2005, maybe?
This is the administration.
No, I think
Nice.
it's
In the
somebody.
last meeting, y'all caught my Google commercial at the beginning, and then I'm pouring my heart out at the end, and the tape stops.
Well, I'm sorry, darling.
Timing is everything. If the city wants to pay for a digital one, we won't have to turn. We had to take the tape out and put another tape in, so we miss 60 seconds every single time. It runs over an hour.
Next time.
See if it's in the budget though. Buy us a digital camera. Then we won't miss anything. We can't
No,
afford
it's just, it was funny. I'm
I
telling
know
people
timing.
about doing their Google phones. It was just a commercial because it was early. And it's on the
And of course,
website.
and then it runs. It was just timing.
Well, you know, the thing is, nobody would believe our purpose in this. Nobody would believe our purpose in this.
I still can't hear you. I don't know. I asked y'all today. I mean, y'all probably done it anyway, but I'm all for it. Well, I was reporting it. Now you're going to prove I'm guilty.
Just kind of. Just make sure you don't trip on her.
I'm the press. Joy was.
Good to see you.
I met you before.
You can't what? I didn't hear a word you just said. It sounded like you said I can't see, and that's all I heard you say. You want to raise this up? Just go up another foot. Coming out. They're about to start.
Yeah, well,
I didn't know if they were going to be pulling this table.
okay, I got you.
Okay. I mean,
Well,
really.
honey,
I know, I'm just saying. Okay.
I ain't got a click.
I can push and preamble.
Mayor, you know this is wrong. I hope so.
I could sell it.
Exactly. You better check me out.
Took my grandson. I'm sorry, honey, I can't.
No, it's all right. You didn't know lawyers were going to get up there and get
Lawyers always get me. Excuse me.
She's good.
I'm going to go up with
Thank you. We're going to be
it. Is what it is.
some of the sound and all the pictures.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is the call meeting of Mayor and Council, January 26, 2016. Jennifer, the roll call will reflect that all members of Mayor and Council are present this evening. And we welcome you and thank you for coming out tonight. The first order of business tonight is a public hearing, and I will call the public hearing to order at this time. And I will call upon our attorney,
Sorry, I couldn't be good for the Hapeville.
And they may ask you, Winston, to speak up. And the green light has to be on and hold it close to your mouth.
Ready?
All right. You're ready.
All right, well, obviously, Mr. Mayor, the format is, as a public hearing, the council wants to hear from citizens and members of the public. And for citizens speaking in favor of the application, citizens speaking against the application will have an opportunity to speak. Clearly, the applicant will have an opportunity to speak and have to be represented by legal counsel. Consider the facts and evidence presented by the applicant. You can consider the opinions of the citizens, and then you can adjourn the public hearing at that point, any deliberative process that the council wants to engage in. So it's a straightforward process, as set forth in the ordinance. We'll open the public hearing, taking the views of citizens and the applicant, closing the public hearing for the council to deliberate.
Thank you. And the purpose of this is consideration to approve or deny an on-premise beer, wine, and liquor alcohol beverage license for JMP Properties LLC, DBA The Castle Restaurant. The applicant for an alcohol license was denied his request by the ARB on December the 10th, 2015. With that being said, Mr. Patton, would you like to explain a little bit about your application, or your attorney speak to the application, and then we'll take comments. During the comment time, we do ask that you keep your comments concise and non-repetitive as possible so we can move the proceedings along. But do feel free to share any comments or questions that you may have, keeping this report with me.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor Hall, members of the City Council of the City of Hapeville. I am David Kutsky. I'm representing Mr. Patton and his related legal entities in connection with this application. We're happy to be here for consideration of this hard-working man's application on de novo review from the denial of the Alcohol Review Board's application. I think it bears noting for the record that the Alcohol Review Board's denial of the application is premised on one item, and that is that on page 4 of the application, the members of the Alcohol Review Board determined that Mr. Patton had misrepresented something with respect to the possibility of there being a previous revocation of an alcohol permit. That was the sole issue that was raised, the sole basis for the motion that the ARB made. Whether I can take from that the ARB approved of the remainder of the application, I'm not sure. In any event, this is a de novo appeal before this body. And this body has the ability to take and hear the evidence that it wants, in addition to what is contained in the application. Mr. Patton has worked long and hard to take his building down in North Central and turn it into something very nice. It's on one of the main arteries going into your city, and Mr. Patton has spent a lot of time and a lot of his personal money in turning that into a very attractive building. It was not when he took the building over some time ago. That building houses a restaurant, which is the site for which this application is being made. That restaurant is approximately 13,000 square feet. The building in its totality is a little over 36,000 square feet. That building has additional space in it. Some of those spaces are currently rented to other tenants. Mr. Patton has also come up with an idea to create a special event center, and that permit has already gone through the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. The long story made short here is that this is a development that he is doing. The restaurant is a key and integral part of his development, and that's because it is a way of securing funding to make the rest of the development work. That development, when it's completely filled with tenants, when it's completely filled with guests at his restaurant, will provide many jobs for this city and will also be a source of revenues for this city. It's a bit of an economic engine in an area of this city which up until his presence there was somewhat plighted. Now, this being a de novo review, I'm sure the mayor and council is aware that there's a bit of a firestorm, and for some reason, what I consider to be unfounded fear about Mr. Patton and his designs for this particular building and restaurant. Long, those are totally unfounded. The local social media frenzy, I don't quite understand. There's people saying this is going to be a strip club. There's people saying this is going to be a nightclub. This is a restaurant and a lounge. It is 13,000 square feet. It is not, and what was made a big deal out of in front of the ARB was the fact that in the previous business information, Mr. Patton had a facility of 50,000 square feet where he ran a nightclub. We heard evidence about that nightclub time and time again. But please note the difference between this application and that business is this is a different business. 13,000 square feet, which is what this facility is not suitable for the type of business that you ran at that point in time. This is a man who wants to bring a business to this town, make it work, build the whole development, make it look good on the way in. We would ask that this body please consider this application on its merits, not by reference to a different location in a different time in another city. We also heard in front of the alcohol board a whole bunch of different issues, a whole bunch of different speculation as to what might constitute ordinance violations, table and seating ratio requirements, classroom requirements, things along these lines. Those are not reasons for denying an application. There's a process in place that this city knows well for dealing with those type of matters, and that is a citation for an ordinance violation, which is returned to the appropriate body to hear it. That's something for later. This body's responsibility is to look at this application dispassionately, do so under the guidance which is contained in your ordinance, and approve the application if the application is complete and there are no disqualifying elements in it. There are no disqualifying elements in it, and we're going to ask this body to approve this application so that this man can go into the business for the benefit, of course, that's why we all work, but also for the benefit of this community. In conclusion of my opening statement, Mr. Patton will abide by your code of ordinances. This is a different time, a different place. This is not what has been validated in the local social media of the previous incarnation of the previous business. We ask you for your dispassionate, objective review of this application and you give Mr. Patton his right to be in business in the city. And with that, we are open for questions. You can understand the entire application has been presented to you. I assume you have the opportunity to look at the application, to evaluate it. We are here to address any of your concerns regarding the application.
Council, you have any questions for Mr. Patton? Winston, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
All right, sir.
We are prepared to address questions at any time during this proceeding.
After the board gets comments, we'll call you back up for any rebuttal.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, at this time I'll take public comments. We'll start with those in favor of the application. I'll start on my right-hand side of the room. And now the left-hand side of the room. Scott.
I'll defer to my wife if she wants to go first.
Well,
Oh, well, second.
I just speak pretty loudly. Had to be sure it was on. I would like to see this over with. We've dawdled with this application for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's driven everybody crazy, and for no reason. Nobody knows Josh. Nobody knows what he really wants to do. He wants to open a restaurant, hopefully selling oysters, because I like his oysters. And I really just can't understand it. Is it that we don't want a club full of black people here? I have half of my family's black. Half of my family's gay. I just don't get it. I can't understand it, and I hate to see a city that I love so much acting like this. It really troubles my heart. Thank you. No.
Good evening, Scott Whitaker, 3347 North Whitney Avenue. Appreciate y'all listening. You're very rude. Just want to state that I know we've been filming, and I've got the recording of the December 10th meeting in which ARB turned down Mr. Patton. And there were a couple of comments made by board members that I take a little bit of exception to. Board member wrote, quote, "It's a felony to make false statements on this application. I'm not saying he's committed a felony." Chairman Maddox asked Mr. Patton about the Castle Restaurant. Why did you shut it down? Reply, "It won't make it without alcohol." Chairman Maddox, was your food just not good enough for people to eat without washing it down with vodka? These comments by ARB members seem to indicate animosity and bias toward the applicant. If you compare the questioning of Mr. Patton with that of every single other alcohol applicant for a pouring license in Hapeville, you can see no one else was questioning this man. I've got it on tape. We're happy to share it all with you. Add to this the fact that ARB member Mike Murphy and the spouse of former Councilmember Laura Murphy had a very long-standing, very public feud with Mr. Patton. And that was the 3 votes that made the denial of the application. I ask the mayor and council today, please take a step, remove the long shadow of prejudice from the city. Thank you.
All right, comments against, I'll start on my right.
Ladies and gentlemen of this governing body, may I just give you a statement I have here.
Can you hold the microphone? They're having trouble hearing you. Green light.
Ladies and gentlemen of the governing body, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm just going to hand you all a statement. If you have to among yourselves, I'm going to summarize it. As Mr. Whitaker said, I did not accuse Mr. Patton of a felony. I simply said he may have. But what I did do some research, and what I'm going to do is just delineate very briefly the research I did. As Mr. Patton's attorney said that his application was rejected on one issue, and that is the false statements about not having a alcohol license revoked. Mr. Patton was quite aware that he had an alcohol license revoked, and it's in black and white in this suit that he made against the city of Hapeville, filed on October the 3rd, 2003, in which he states he lost his license. Okay? He then removed that issue to the Northern District of Georgia, and they ruled against him. And that was in August of 2005, I believe. And then the appeals court ruled against him, and was the final ruling, and that was January the 16th of 2005. That date's in 2006. That date's important. Because thereupon, in my research, by open records request to the city of East Point, Mr. Patton applies for an alcohol license in East Point. And this is a pattern of behavior. On December the 10th, he submitted his application to us, and he stated he never had a license revoked. That was a false statement. His original license was revoked by the city of Hapeville in June of 2003 for health and safety violations. He was quite well aware his license had been revoked by Hapeville. He himself stated this quite directly in a suit against Hapeville, which I've already mentioned. And then on June the 28th, 2004, he sought removal to the Northern District, which I've already mentioned, and I already mentioned that his appeal was denied. Please note the dates of the aforementioned court decisions and a pattern of behavior Mr. Patton has exhibited throughout this process. At the end of 2005 and beginning of 2006, Mr. Patton went to East Point to seek an alcohol license in that city. On East Point's application for an alcohol license, question number 12 on page 7 states, has licensee or any member of the partnership ever applied for an alcohol beverage license and been denied or revoked or suspended? Mr. Patton answered no. Mr. Patton then applies for renewals of his license in East Point. In these renewals, he affirms that his original application to the city of East Point is correct, thereby affirming his claim that he never had an alcohol license revoked. He did this throughout the years he held an alcohol license in East Point, a minimum of 8 times. Mr. Patton, on various documents and in black and white, has exhibited a history of behavior denying he never had an alcohol license revoked. Mr. Patton then comes to the city of Hapeville and on December the 10th, 2015, continued this pattern of behavior when he again answered no to the question asking whether he had a license revoked, and with such audacity that he makes this claim to the city that they revoked his original license. Mr. Patton has shown a dangerous pattern in making false statements, which is a felony in the state of Georgia. Being willing to commit a felony to gain a license constitutes a dangerous ambition. What else would Mr. Patton do to secure and retain a license? I was also want to mention that the day after this occurred, I was in a restaurant with Mr. Maddox. Mr. Patton got up and with foul language, loudly, and there were witnesses heard the loud part of it, and then quietly he said he's going to get us and he will get his license. With all due respect, members of this governing board, I don't see how. His attorney has said, you know, he was denied on one issue. That issue is important. It throws out everything else. The man may have designs for economic development in the city, but you can't trust a man who has lied a number of times in black and in white. I don't see how you can give him a license based on that. Furthermore, when I got this information from the city of East Point, just so Mr. Patton will know this, it didn't look like I had everything. So I left a message, and Inspector Kimberly Davis called, and I informed her of all of these court decisions. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments against the application on the right-hand side of the room? Moving over to the left, any comments against the application from the left-hand side of the room? Ms. Murphy?
I'd also like to give the board This is an affirmation basically of the lawsuits that George mentioned. The first items reference those same lawsuits.
Yeah, they're not hearing you.
This is an affirmation of what George Logan stated in response to those initial lawsuits. My only additional item in this case is a request that Alderman Barr be recused or recuse herself from this discussion, comments and voting, and based on this matter. And the reason for that is a letter was attached that she wrote on November 30th of 2005. This was basically in the middle of all of these lawsuits that were going on. She was well aware of it, probably more than most people, because she had been alderman at the time. This was after she was alderman, but she wrote a letter recommending to the city of East Point that Josh Patton be awarded a license in the city of East Point. And based on her previous ties with Mr. Patton, both through her husband and all of his holdings, I would ask that she recuse herself from voting consider this application. I discussed with the attorney, I understand she went to right to review that later.
Thank you. Any other comments against the application on the left-hand side of the room, Mr. Faulkner?
Frank Faulkner, 3100 Springdale Road. I'm continuing the tradition, it appears, of having lots of papers passed around. I'd like to pass this out to the board members. Mr. Patton's attorney suggested that we shouldn't judge him by his past actions. However, he has had a very checkered past, if you would, in his previous businesses, both here in Hapeville and in East Point. The first document I passed out to the council members is a police report from the city of East Point of all the police calls to Mr. Patton's operation over there in East Point. During the period of time that Mr. Patton was there, from January of 2000, actually April 2005 was the first report, through 2014, there were 1,730 police incidents to Mr. Patton's address at 3180 Main Street, doing business as Central Station. The incidents range from homicide to rape, assault, public drunkenness, violent behavior, for a total of 1,730 incidents. Now, Mr. Patton shared the Tri-City Plaza, for those of you who are familiar with it. It's a U-shaped plaza with 12 other businesses there in that plaza. During this same period that Mr. Patton had 1,730 police calls to his operation, there were significantly less, and you'll find out on page 4, for the other businesses in Tri-City Plaza. The same period, Mr. Patton had 1,730 police reports. There were only 424 to all the other 12 businesses in that area. If you look at the last page, you'll see a graphic demonstration of the 1,730 reports versus the 424 for the other 12 businesses in that area. During the trial or lawsuit that has been referenced earlier that Mr. Patton filed against the city, Mr. Patton's attorney said that there was a comparison of incidents from Mr. Patton's operation on Central Avenue versus the IHOP place, but known as 301 North Central. Well, 301 North Central has 3 businesses associated with it: the IHOP, the Best Western, and the area currently referenced as Joffrey's. During this research of mine, let me pass these out to the council members so you can get a little better idea of what it's talking about. Jennifer. during the time that these incidents were occurring, I had a open records request to the City of Hapeville Police Department, and they provided me with information that during this period from 2008 through 2014, there were 504 police reports issued for the address or the businesses at 301 North Central. Now, looking through the actions or the incidents at 301 North Central, you see that's the compilation on pages 2 and 3 of the 504. There is not one homicide there. There's no drunken disorderly. There's no violent assaults. There are 67 of these reports were code violations that the police reported. 67 out of the 504 were code violations. No personal injuries, no property damage, etc. During the same period, the police reports for Josh Patton's operation as a central station had 1,521 police reports. So three businesses had 500 reports. One business had 1,521. This, in conjunction with the central station operation over at East Point, seems to demonstrate a pattern that the city certainly doesn't need to see again. So, my question now, let's address this from one of economics. Mr. Patton wants to start a business. So what are the costs and rewards if Mr. Patton has a business and continues his pattern in the past? The chief, I'm sure, can tell us what it costs for one policeman to show up at any given incident. Well, from what I've seen lately, the police don't show up just with one person, they have a backup. So you're going to have backups. Mr. Patton's operation will be predominantly in the evenings, so we're going to have additional police to cover when the patrolmen go to that central station or the castle, as it's being called now. Does that leave the rest of us in the city unprotected? What does it cost the city? Is there rewards on the taxation that Mr. Patton is proposing? Will there be sufficient income to offset the added cost to the city? Now that's the economic cost. Let's talk about the image. Across the street from where Mr. Patton is proposing his operation is a world headquarters, the North American headquarters for a huge company. I find it difficult to believe that they would be happy to see blue flashing lights every time you look out their window. So the image of Hapeville would suffer should Mr. Patton continue his behavior as shown in the past. So think about it from an economic standpoint. Can the city afford the added cost for policemen? And what about the image that possibly would be occurring here with Mr. Patton's constant police presence? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more comments? George, I gotta keep the format.
I just want to attend to what he says. I think it's important.
I'll defer to the attorney. I have to follow, George, I have to follow very strict guidelines on this public hearing. Because we'll give some rebuttal time at the end. I'm gonna give the applicant some rebuttal time, so I'll allow you the privilege of rebuttal time at that time. David?
My name's David Maddox. I am a resident of Hapeville and a member of the Alcohol Review Board. Well, I got to say tonight, I did not hear what George had to say. Sticking to what you Yeah, so if it's redundant, please bear with me. On the morning of December 11th, which was the day after the last, or the ARB hearing for liquor license for Josh Patton, George Rogan and I were at Waffle House at Jimmy Kerr having breakfast, and all of a sudden, a fellow by the name of Josh Patton pops up at our booth, and he was very perturbed and did not like what had happened the night before. Although I do not know this person, he certainly thought he knew me because he called me everything that he could think of, UMFs, that sort of thing. And I told him, I didn't ask him to leave us alone and to move on several times, and he was not going to hear nothing of that. And finally, he got a little tired of it, and he says that he was going to take care of us and that he was going to get his liquor license. I don't know about y'all, but I didn't take it that he was going to start funding my IRA account. And I took it very serious. And I don't think that, and let me say this, a liquor license in this town is a privilege and not a right. And I don't think fully the moronic behaviors and violent tendencies should be rewarded with a liquor license in this town. With this and all the other issues you got, I don't see any problem here that what the verdict should be. Thank you very much.
All right, any other comments in opposition to the application on the my left-hand side of the room? Okay, I'll get back to the rebuttal side. George, I'll let you give your comment real quick.
It was Mr. Patton who opened up Central Station at his application for alcohol review board. He's the person who mentioned it. That's when I brought up the reviews about marijuana at the building. People saying, one woman saying she was so sick, etc. from it. His attorney then said, Mr. Patton, this is important, Mr. Patton is not responsible for what happens in the building. That's a quote from what his attorney said. So you're going to, so does this man Patton think that he's not responsible to report what goes on in his building? That's important.
Mr. Kevsky, do you want to have any rebuttal?
Yes, it would, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First of all, as a general observation, I find it extremely interesting that 3 of the 4 commenters reportedly on behalf of the public were members of the ARB, the Alcohol Review Board, the reportedly objective body that passed on this man's application in this city for a permit. I find it ironic that Mr. Murphy, who had the audacity to request Ms. Barr to recuse herself, when in fact Mr. Murphy was presented with the exact same motion at the ARB hearing based upon his marital relationship to a known antagonist of Mr. Patton, and refused to recuse himself. I find it offensive that Mr. Maddox would call Mr. Patton's comments moronic. It was Mr. Maddox who sat in that chair right over there while he was in session as a member of the Alcohol Review Board. He basically said, so, is your food so bad that people got to be drunk to eat it? Does that sound like a dispassionate, objective body governed by objective standards passing on the application of a citizen with the ability to do business in this town? No, it doesn't. Now, getting back to the substance of Mr. Rogan's speech, he cites as authority for his statement that Mr. Patton had a revocation of a previous license for alcohol in East Point. He cites as authority for that an allegation and a lawsuit authored by an attorney on behalf of Mr. Patton, not by Mr. Patton. Now, since that hearing, obviously when we get to the bottom of that issue, there were 2 Georgia Open Records Act requests made to the city of Hapeville for a determination as to whether there had ever been a revocation by Mr. Patton, or permit issued Mr. Patton. The fact of the matter is, there hasn't been. Back in 2003, Mr. Patton was issued, his business was issued a temporary alcohol permit. That alcohol permit was not renewed, plain and simple. What Mr. Rogan contends is the falsehood that he made is his response to a question on page 4 of the permit application. At the bottom of that page, there are 2 questions asked of the applicant. Question number 1 is, have you or anyone with interest in the establishment ever or do you currently hold an alcohol beverage license with any other municipality, county, or state? That question on its face asks the applicant, did you or ever or are you now holding a permit in another municipality, county, or state? He answered yes. He answered truthfully because at that time he did have a permit in the city of East Point. The second question is, following up on the first question, if so, have you or anyone holding an interest in the establishment ever been placed on probation or had your license revoked? He answered no. Please read the question carefully. The question is contingent upon the question previously, and that is, did you have an alcoholic beverage license with any other municipality, county, or state? Yes, you did. If so, has it been revoked or on probation? The answer is no. There is not one record before this committee, this council. There cannot be one record before this council which would reflect the fact that he had a permit in another municipality, county, or state revoked. Mr. Patton answered both those questions honestly, correctly, in accordance with the record, and to stand before this body and accuse him of being a felon is offensive and a great problem. I believe that's all I have by way of rebuttal. Mr. Patton, if you care to make a statement, you're free to do so.
Yes, I'd like to say something about the incident at the Waffle House.
Please address the point. Our council.
I went into the Waffle House, which I'd been in there, not with me. I sat down.
We can't hear you.
These two people were.
They can't hear you. Can you take the microphone and just pat it so they can hear? Thank you.
These two people.
That's good.
You know?
His name like has to be on.
Hello?
Yes.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I went into the Waffle House. I sat down, have my breakfast. And I hear Central Station, Josh Patton and his lawyers and his customers. I look into the window where I could see who was sitting behind me, which I didn't recognize these guys when I walked in. And evidently they didn't recognize me because I had my Marine Corps hoodie on. And all I heard for 30 minutes while I was sitting there, something about Central Station, Josh Patton, his lawyers, and his customers, and unworthy customers, and low-life customers, and we don't want these kind of people in our city. And I sat there and took this for 30 minutes. And then when I got through eating, I stood up, turned around, and stood straight in front of these two men, and that's when I said what I had to say. And they were lucky that they got away with just a verbal abuse. Trust me.
Lucky what?
Lucky just got a really good one, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. All right, we are at the stage of staff comment. Does our legal team have any issues that they would like to address?
Can we rebut what you just said?
No, yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good at this point, because I've already moved it to the next one.
Legal team has no comments or questions unless you have questions of us. We prepared the record for your information.
All right, where's council level questions now? Does any member of council have any questions for the applicant or the attorney or staff?
What's our order of business here? Do we make a determination as soon as we ask the questions? Are our attorneys going to make presentations? I'm not sure what our order of business is.
Do we have comments for the attorney?
That's correct. We ask the questions, council makes their comments, and then we turn the public hearing and vote on the matter.
Okay, all right. I just have one question, and it is, got a lot of paper here, but as I looked through this, I saw that the restaurant, the Castle that you have now has 57 parking places. Is that correct? Nope.
We got more than that.
I'm sorry, I thought I read that somewhere, because it said your occupancy was for 657? Okay. How many parking spaces do you have for your restaurant?
We got over 100.
Okay.
You ain't got the 377 parking. I got all that parking.
Right, so you would say 100 spaces? Okay, for assuming you have a great night and the 657 people are dining, would that not have in my opinion, suggest an overflow of parking needed somewhere?
I had Central Station down there before. I rented the other lots next door to me. I mean, they're using my lots now. The people next door.
The UAW building and that one, or the liquor store?
The liquor store, I got 2 liquor stores, one on each side of me.
Okay.
And I rented all of
Oh, and then parking lot of the shopping center with the restaurants and the sombreros and the liquor store Ace. No, I think that's, so that parking lot, you read that one as overflow?
And they're using my parking lot now, when they get overflow, they come into my parking lot and park.
Okay.
And I did the same for them.
Well, I guess I'm just confused. I don't know what our ordinance says about, I guess assigned places for your personal place of business. I don't know whether we require to show a legal binding contract that says you have permission to use these spaces. I mean, I don't know where that goes, and hopefully our attorney can address that. But I did want to get your occupancy numbers is set at 657. Is that correct? I think that's what I read in here. Yes.
If I may weigh in on that. I believe that the city planner weighed in on both those issues. Which was previously presented.
Right.
And I don't believe there was any issue with respect to the number of parking spaces vis-a-vis the potential full occupancy.
Right.
I believe the city planner passed on that vote.
Okay, and I think that was one of the issues that some of the residents who are in that neighborhood had, was concern about overflow parking on streets and if it would cause, traffic interruptions and that sort of thing. And that's my concern for the parking issue.
And if I would note also, contained in the application, Mr. Patton did include a parking security plan as well as a valet parking plan as well to assist the customers and of course keep traffic control, to keep traffic out of the residential neighborhoods. The location is on a main artery. Behind it is the residential neighborhoods.
Right.
That will be taken care of. That plan was submitted in the original application.
Thank you.
Council, any other thing?
It seems that I've heard 2 things that are different tonight. One is that you've had a license revoked before, and then you're saying, no, he never has. Has there ever been one revoked? Do you have any information on that, or which one is accurate?
I think Mr. Kutsky's comment about that had to do with the wording of the 2 sentences at the bottom of page 4.
I understood that, but was the license in April previously revoked? 2003, I believe, was the year cited.
No, Mr. Raymond, if I may address that. In 2003, Mr. Patton's business was issued a temporary permit. That permit was not renewed. It was never a revocation.
And were there any reasons for not renewing it?
It basically shut the business down and moved from this point. It created a new business down there. It simply wasn't renewed. I got the records pursuant to the Open Records Act, from the city clerk, because it was important to me to understand whether there had been a revocation of a Hapeville license. And the fact of the matter is there has not been. It was a non-renewal.
Is our information say the same thing that he said?
My understanding from Jennifer, I'll ask her to speak correctly just because you were here and I was, is that the license was not renewed because I guess he withdrew and went to another community.
I'm not sure of the circumstances of the non-renewal, but, according to the ARB minutes, that, and the council minutes, the license, was not renewed at the end of 2003.
But you can find any record of revocation. I know that was at the time when we had lawsuits going back and forth. I don't remember the details. I lost my name. Council, any other? Wait. Mr. Kutsky, do you have any final remarks or comments?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've taken enough of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. All right, that will close the, oh, yeah, that's right. So, all right, now we're to the mayor and council comments, which will be deemed deliberation, and we'll close the public hearing and go to a vote, I suppose. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Now will be the time if you have any legal questions to reach out to our auditor.
I do have a comment about me recusing myself. When I made my recommendation to East Point, I was no longer on the city council in Hapeville, and I knew Mr. Patton, and I knew he had run a very nice business here. I spent all my years in my office right behind his business and worked there until 3 o'clock in the morning, and never one time in all the time he was there any problems at my business from his business. Also, the dealings that my husband may have had with him, my husband's been dead for 3.5 years, so I really don't imagine that that could be any possible conflict, so I will not be recusing myself.
Any other comments, council, questions?
Well, it seems like, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did find the piece of paper that said 57 parking places. It is the alcohol establishment planning and zoning form. I don't see a date on this, but, oh, November 11, 2015. And it is the alcohol planning and zoning form, and down here it says number of parking spaces provided is 57. So was that in error? No. Okay. That's a big concern of mine, of the total occupancy. And
Can I comment on that? Parking is planning and zoning's job, and I believe that they will address that before he's given a CO to open. And if he has presented a parking plan to them that is acceptable, I think that's who we defer to. Is that not correct?
I was going to ask Winston or Ethan, or procedurally, we're here for the purpose of alcohol. Although the planning and zoning form is part of the application packet.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the ordinance says that the council can consider whether the proposed location has adequate off-street parking facilities and other parking available for its features. So that's something that this body can consider. Certainly in your consideration, you would take in the advice of your experts and your staff, but that's something for your consideration.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
I also have a couple of comments about the police call comparisons between East Point and here. As the attorney stated, the facility here will be about 1/4 the size it is in East Point. And I will guarantee you that no one here would dare compare Hapeville's calls to the number of police calls that East Point has. They have a tremendous many more calls than we ever imagined have. When I was on council, there was a study done at the facility here as it was open. Between midnight and 4 a.m. over a 12-month period, that facility had exactly 11 calls total. The IHOP down the street for that exact same period had 36 calls. If you want to compare, the one down the street didn't serve alcohol and had 3 times as many calls. So I think you have to look at it, compare it to the facility he is planning on putting here, and look what he's planning on doing here, not what he did somewhere else.
It seems like a lot is hinging on whether there was a revocation of a license before in terms of the ARB refusing it, but there are other considerations. One do with, because it is a privilege and not a right. There are things to consider. I know it's a past revocation, but I'd like to know what work has been done to determine beyond that, because that apparently is not the case from what you're telling me from your records.
Those are part of the considerations that we can entertain. The background history is in the documents that we received. And so, but again, that's, as you see with the legal brief that we received, we've been given the guidelines for review and guidelines for which the application to be granted or denied. And that's one thing that can be considered in our thought process.
Mr. Mayor, if I may address that question, I believe Mr. Random is focusing on whether there is a past criminal history for Mr. Patton. Is that the question?
Yes.
Because my reading of the ordinance on section 5-6-18B2 defines a prohibited person as one who is convicted of a felony relating to violence, illegal substances, gambling, theft, or alcohol use. Mr. Patton's criminal history has been provided in the materials, and a review of that will show that none of those things happened. There is no conviction for a felony. There is no conviction for a felony relating to violence, illegal substances, gambling, theft, or alcohol use. There is, however, one conviction, which is a 1969 conviction that had to do with theft of livestock, which was a misdemeanor for which Mr. Patton received 12 months of probation and a $50 fine. And that, of course, was 47 years ago. So that's the only thing in the criminal history.
Okay, yeah, there's a huge body of information. Thank you.
Any other comments, Council?
Can we take into effect past uses of the building? Is that one of the things that we can take into effect or take into account?
In what respect?
So we have information of what was there before. Can we use what was there before? I think I read in the
Was also used as a restaurant previously, Viking Seafood. And I know that Mr. Patton has stated that this is to be the Castle Restaurant, and probably it is a larger square footage, but I don't think that that Viking restaurant stayed open a year. So I'm not sure what the thinking is that a restaurant in the same location could have better success. I just kind of want to follow a line of thinking on that. It's just going to think that this is going to be a better one. Okay.
And submitted in the application were photographed. First of all, going back to the point in time when this building was run as a club back in 2003, it is not the same building. There have been virtually millions of dollars worth of renovations. The exterior is completely new. The interior is completely new. And I invite members of the council to take a look at the photographs of the interior of this restaurant, which are contained in the application. This is not the same building that it was. It may be a same address, but it is not the same building.
Any other comments, Council? Come to the time where I will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion for consideration to deny or approve the on-premise beer, wine, liquor, alcohol, beverage license for Nancy Properties LLC, DBA the Castle Restaurant. Anyone prepared to make a motion on the side? Motion to
Approved, I'm sorry.
motion to approve. Motion to approve. Is there a second? There is a second. The motion dies due to lack of second. Is anyone prepared to make an additional motion?
motion to deny.
Motion to deny. Is there a second? All right. The motion is dead on the floor due to lack of a second. Mr. Attorney.
I knew you were going to call me.
I think this is what they call a stalemate. What's our procedure at this point?
I've not seen it.
I'm 18 I've never seen a motion, one way or the other, not get a second.
Well, I would inquire, we received some items from our attorney's office that would be possible consideration for us to think of, and I thought that our attorneys were going to present those.
This is a de novo hearing, and the attorney presented you the brief by which, they can't make the choice for you, they give you the parameters by which.
Okay.
And when the packet was sent out Friday, I advised everyone via email that if there were any questions or comments procedurally or legally, that we could have a conference call with the attorneys, and I heard back from no one regarding that.
Well, and I can certainly read, and I had spoken with Ethan on the way in, and I thought that the way it would work is similar to the previous, I guess, when we did an ARB, what do we got, appeal. We had a counsel who...
Outside counsel.
Yeah, and she basically said, this is for, this is against, and these are the reasons and all of that, so I was thinking our counsel would do the same on that, perhaps mentioning these items, so I'm just confused.
They have provided the information, and you won't provide any recommendation on which way you should go, but those are the rules and the parameters under which you can do it.
Well, this is my comment. I think it's been sitting around too long. A motion needs to be made, and somebody needs to second, and a vote needs to be made one way or the other. I have heard on many comments on both sides, and I agree that some of the comments made at the ARB, looks like the ARB may not have been looking at it completely objective to pick one question and use that as the only criteria to decide is not appropriate. So I just feel that the applicant has waited long enough. I think this council, as a body that governs the city, should have it seconded and have it come up for a vote. Whichever anybody wants to vote, they need to do it, they need to do it now. And I will make a new motion that we approve the application.
Okay, there's a new motion on the floor for approval. Is there a second to that motion? There being no second, the motion dies on the floor.
But, Mr. Mayor, I think at some point, if I'm reading the council correctly, there may be a desire to get more information, because it seems like...
Oh, absolutely. It seemed like, I'm thinking that I read all this stuff that I want to understand, and yeah, I can call everybody and ask a bunch of questions and run up a big bill, but I thought there would be a presentation. And so, once again, I'm supposed to make a decision about something as major as this, based on whether there really was a revocation or not, when I think there's way more factors to consider, and yet none of that has been talked about, so now I'm supposed to deny it based on what? Something I read that other people don't know. It's a very uncomfortable place to be.
And I am in agreement with Councilman.
Does that make
Mann,
sense?
Simply because I think that the attorney should have a chance to speak to these issues that were brought to our attention, but if we don't bring them out in the public hearing, then, you know, I can say, oh, well, just because item number 3, I would vote to deny the thing, but deny the permit, whereas it's clear to me that that would be a considerable thing, but if it's not presented in this forum, then Mr. Patton or his attorney would have an opportunity to rebut or to speak about it and say, well, no, that's not correct. And I think one of the issues in here is when it was previously opened under Steve Bennett with the Southside B. Was he the owner? Was Josh the owner? And was there a handshake? Was the legal ownership transferred?
There was ample opportunity to ask those questions.
Well, and I understand, but again, I thought our attorneys were going to bring that up.
Okay, I can jump in, because I guess the only thing that we know is what happened last time. And I was sort of under the same understanding as the other 3 council members. So I guess all I know is what happened at the last hearing. And so I just assumed that was the way these hearings went. And
right.
I just don't know.
I understood from the package I received that if I had any questions at all to ask the attorney, that I was to do it before this meeting. Also, the ARB got exactly everything we got in our package. And the only thing they used to deny his application from, they didn't bring up all this other stuff, they used that one question and said they were denying it on that basis. And they had a chance to look at all this other stuff, bring all these other information forward also. Jennifer said, Open Records has said, that he never had a revocation in Hapeville. So basically, he did answer that question correctly. ARB used that one question as the reason they denied that application. And they had everything we have. And I understood from what Alan sent me and what William sent me that I was supposed to read all that, know that I knew what I was talking about when I got here. And I think it behooves this council, as leaders of this community, that we need to make a decision.
Well, I think we have the ability to look at everything, not just the one question.
But we have
the
to
ability
do that.
We have the ability to do everything. But I guess we had the experience of the other.
Our first appeal.
The first appeal that was different. It was a different setup than this. And I guess.
I had no reason to think it was not going to be the same.
But were you going to make your complete decision on what the attorney said here?
Yes. But because, Ruth, it's more than one issue. We're not determining whether the ARB is correct or not. We're looking at the whole application, not just their one thing. It's a whole application, not just determining whether we agree or disagree with the ARB. We are now, that has been appealed to us, and we decide, looking at the whole application, whether we see any issues in it that would warrant a approval or a denial.
Okay, do you see any issues that would warrant a denial?
Yes.
Well, then that's what you want to do, make that motion.
Defer to my attorney to bring those up.
It's not his job at this hearing to do that. He has sent you a memo giving his perspective of everything, which is why he would get up here and say the same thing.
Winston or Ethan, can you explain the purpose of a de novo hearing and the context of which those hearings operate?
I can, Mr. Mayor. The note here is correct. I mean, all bets are off at this point. And what the ARB did is what they did. This body has to look at everything afresh and consider each and every single thing in the application and everything that the ordinance authorizes you to look at. Now, Mr. Patton's attorney can make a presentation because he's Mr. Patton's attorney and he's advocating for a particular outcome. The city attorney's job is not necessarily to advocate for a certain outcome, but to assist the council in bringing forth certain facts that you might consider relevant in your consideration.
So we're like ARB version 2 tonight.
That's exactly right. And so our job is to, just like everybody else in the staff, the police chief, the planning and zoning folks, nobody's going to necessarily say, here's what you ought to do. We're going to say, based on our review, here's what we want to cover, and based on all of those facts and circumstances, then council makes a decision. Now, if you don't feel that you have enough facts and circumstances that would allow you to make an informed decision, then I think that the council ought to do whatever it feels empowered to do to get the information to make an informed decision. Maybe you have that in front of you this evening, maybe you don't. But ultimately, it falls on the council based on, and if the packet wasn't sufficient, then we can certainly supplement that. But ultimately, you're going to have to decide based on the council's own prerogative.
You want to address something?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I note on tonight's agenda, under item 4, the public hearing dealing with this particular license application, that attached to that was a hot link to the JM Properties LLC alcohol application PDF form. And I'm curious as to, I assume that is the document that the mayor and council have in front of them that was provided.
We received 2 documents. Obviously, that application contains sensitive information that is not subject to open records. So we received a complete and total separate packet from this. We have, in an effort to be more transparent and open, we have made a habit of hot linking our agenda items to the very information that we're looking at. But in a situation like this, we minimize the information that was available. Basically, just the applications redacting the necessary items that were in the smaller version of the application. But the council, the packet that we received is this.
And that's essentially what is hot linked in the agenda.
A much abbreviated version. It's only a handful of pages because, again, a lot of this is criminal history information and sensitive information that is not released.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess where the confusion comes in on this, and we went through this before, the difference between this and when we had the equal hearing was that was a hot topic, if you will, and we brought in an outside counsel. Outside counsel can advise us think their opinion is. However, as Winston has said, Mr. Patton's attorney's here hoping for an outcome positive to his client. Our attorneys have to give us the parameters of the law in which we can operate. And we, as I said a moment ago, we are ARB version 2.0. We're supposed to look at this,
The whole application.
everything, with as fresh a view as possible. And not necessarily uphold or deny the reason that the ARB denied it, but the de novo means fresh look. So if there's something in here that is a stickler for anyone, correct me if I'm wrong, listen, we could deny it based upon other than what the ARB denied it for.
Absolutely, I mean, you can do something totally with what the ARB did, but you're not necessarily bound by that.
Well, that's a great point, but it's very confusing to me when the whole focus seemed to be on this one thing, and it's like, okay, I mean, I see that there's other points of concern that have been put together, and it just seems odd to me that Josh can vote that we deny it, I can second, we can vote, it can be denied, but really, we haven't laid out, or maybe we don't need to, the concerns. That just seems
That is correct,
difficult.
sir. The legal memo you sent gives you the parameters upon which you can consider the approval or denial. You do not have to articulate your exact reason for denial. You just have to make sure that it falls within the parameters of the code.
Now, if you wanted to incur additional legal expense, we could call an outside counsel. We could forward this package to the outside counsel, have them review it. We can meet with them as a separate outside counsel. But the outcome of this, should this application be denied, I think we all know that with the investment that's been made in that building, Mr. Patton and his attorney will probably seek legal action. I'm just saying that's an option that we have to consider, that our decision can be subject to further legal action, because that would, the Superior Court would be their next level of appeal if they were unsatisfied with the decision that this body made. So I guess what I'm saying, that furthermore goes to why our city attorneys can't advise us as to what decision, because they're going to have to, they can't tell us what to do and then defend us at the same time in an appeal matter like this. This de novo hearing is a mini court trial, and we're jurors, basically. We are receiving evidence, and we have to make a decision based upon the evidence we receive. That's the context of
So can this be evidence?
It is, yes.
Okay. So it's not open to,
Well, it's attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
At this point, but
Well, that's the challenge for me. One of the points on here is revocation of license, and that's no longer true. So, I mean, there are concerns I have, but I didn't understand the format. So,
I think that we should be aware that state law, not our ordinance, but state law requires that the decision that you render be openly reviewed in writing. And so to the extent you want to kind of expound on these or if it were denied, you can certainly do that at a written decision.
Whatever you decide, the city attorney can take the cause from there. Basically, at this point, we've given you all the information we have available at this time. If you want to direct us to get additional information, direct us to get outside counsel, or you're satisfied with the reality, you're ready to make a decision, that's up to you. We've done all we can.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, on that point, what I thought I heard was a statement that there are materials that this body is going to be considered, which came from counsel, which are attorney-client privilege, which are obviously not things that either I or my client had the opportunity to review for a very good reason, they're attorney-client privilege. But if those are going to be matters that are going to be used as part of your deliberations and as evidence in support of your deliberations, I've got a problem with that, because that basically denies us the opportunity to examine what that evidence is and rebut it as appropriate. And I think there's a significant issue there.
That's a lead, now that's a question for our city
And that's
attorney.
been my concern.
And we're not, what we give to you is not evidence, it's legal advice. There's a distinction between what's evidence in the record and what's legal advice that your attorney has given to you. And you can listen to the advice of your attorneys, but that can not constitute evidence, and that's.
I think this item is basically just what evidence we can look, what things we can look at that are already in the record that we have. What parameters we're in, not new evidence.
It is not, there's no evidence in this document that is not presented in here.
Submitted by anybody else, save for the applicant, and I on his behalf.
That's correct.
My hand on the Bible.
Okay, this is what I'd like to say. On this page here, it says, code enforcement approved everything, the fire department approved everything, planning and zoning approved everything, and the police department approved, which means they've gone through the application, and they say that that building, the parking, the capacity and everything follows all of our code requirements. The other considerations would be police record, which I believe the attorney has addressed, and whether he's had a revocation, which I believe Jennifer has addressed. In reading, I read the entire application twice. I didn't see anything else in there that it should be considered, that would consider reason for revocation, for not approving this license. You know, if he opens up and he starts doing something he's not supposed to, we have code enforcement for that reason. He can be watched very carefully, or whatever you want to do to make sure he performs what he says he's going to perform. But I saw nothing in this application that would give the right to deny the application.
I guess we can look at off-street parking, 57 spaces, you know.
But
Well, we can look at that. I can look at that. I can look at that.
Okay, wait just a minute. That's parking right at that facility. He also owns the facility next door. He also owns 2 lots around the corner. If he has valet parking, which I assume is in the parking plan, he gave our planning and zoning department, and they said he had enough parking for his capacity. I mean, that's what I'm going about, what our planning and zoning told us.
I'm looking at their application. It says 57. Not additional ones available and adjacent ones owned or not owned by the applicant. It just says 57 spaces available.
But do you say planning and zoning didn't look at the parking?
Maybe they didn't have the occupancy.
If they would have all that. That comes from the fire department. It goes
Well,
first.
if they did it to the planning and zoning guy?
I believe if you remember, if I'm not mistaken, the zoning behind this, we relaxed the zoning. I gotta remember this. There was some relaxation in zoning for our historical buildings. And the question came up when this application first came about last year with Mr. Bennett regarding the parking. And I believe we had loosened the restrictions on parking for historical buildings to allow the parking that we needed downtown, along and other locations around there, which don't have enough parking for this square footage. And I believe that was the basis of the decision, because the building, the historical nature of the building had been out of a restaurant long enough to make it a historical building. That's how I remember that. I could be wrong in my recollection, but that would be a question for Bill Johnson to remind me. Would be that. To that. I know that there was a reason that that the parking was met the standards.
Okay.
Can I make this question, this legal question? Can we prove it contingent?
To that, another issue I had was the beverage servers, I think. I think it was stated in the plan somewhere to have 30 servers, and we only have the permits issued to 8, so I don't know whether that's part of the business plan is to...
I would just say on that I wouldn't expect anybody to hire people until they do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
From
Mayor.
my business perspective.
Okay.
That's correct.
That was just something that, what's in that. Okay, thank you. That's only additional, right, only additional ones that I have.
Okay. We're still in discussion. We have a motion and a second for denial. Are there any further comments? Any further
The
discussion?
certificate of occupancy, is that transferred from ownership?
The CO? I believe the
Was.
CO is married to the building. Is that correct?
CO runs the property.
Mr. Fetcher's in the house. Good evening, sir.
Okay, additionally, are any of the Fulton County health certificates or any of the other certificates transferable from one owner to another? I believe that the property in question was originally owned or tried to open by Steve Bennett, and I think Mr. Patton now has the property, was given the property, or somehow is the owner of the property. And I'm not sure whether those Fulton County.
Ethan.
Yes.
I think the councilwoman is talking about the ownership. Has there been a transfer in ownership from Mr. Steve Bennett to Mr. Joshua Patton?
Mr. Patton owns the building, did own the building, always owned the building. Mr. Bennett was going to run the business,
On the old application that was submitted by Mr. Bennett, he provided that he owned 100% of the business. That was on the old application. Now, on the new application, under Mr. Joshua Patton's name, he lists himself as the owner of 100% of the business. Could you explain the discrepancy there?
Yes, that was the state of the affairs at the point in time when Mr. Bennett made an application as the owner of the business. Mr. Patton is the applicant and the owner of the business, which is before us right now. Mr. Bennett was going to operate and own the business. That didn't work out. This is Mr. Patton's business now.
But did he not apply as the owner, not the manager?
Mr. Bennett applied as the owner of the business, not of the building. That application was denied. That business no longer exists. Mr. Patton now, in his LLC, doing business as at the Castle Restaurant, is the applicant and owner of the business, which is before this board now.
So before Mr. Bennett was going to manage/lease, I assume, the building for his company.
Building or the business?
Southside B doing business as Central Station.
No,
As,
business, not the building.
You was gonna lease the building and own the business. Just like if I rent a building, I own the business that's in it. Since he didn't get approval, he stepped aside and no longer wanted to run a business. So Mr. Patton has now decided to open the business on his own. The building never changed hands. It was just, he was gonna lease, he's no longer leasing. But Mr. Patton's opening it as the owner of the building. Is that correct?
So the building never changed hands, but the business changed hands. Did it not?
No, the business didn't change hands. Mr. Bennett's business disappeared. Because there was no effective way of doing business.
Well, Mr. Bennett was denied, Ethan, just as history. Mr. Bennett, Southside B, was denied by the ARB and chose not to appeal to council. So the castle opened with no alcohol and was not successful. And I believe, I'm not putting words in your mouth, Mr. Bennett, but I believe you chose to close the business down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My business was Southside B, on DBA The Castle. I closed that. Now it's J.M. Patton Properties, DBA The Castle. My business was Southside B, his is J.M. Patton Properties. Just like if I owned a Chick-fil-A and closed it, and he owns a Chick-fil-A. Neither of us own Chick-fil-A. We just opened our business under that name. I had The Castle as the name. He asked could he use The Castle. I said, I got no problem with it. I had nothing to do with it. It was two different businesses.
Council, whether or not you're satisfied with that answer is a factor for you to consider.
Okay. We're still in discussion. There's no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to deny, raise your right hand. All opposed? Wow. And the motion carries for denial.
May I ask this body if you would please state for the record the basis for the denial of this application?
You're not required at this point to state that, and you can certainly, you have to give them a written response that sets forth the reason, but they're not obligated by state law to do that.
Excuse me, sir. Staff has noted the conversation, and we will work with the attorney to put together the appropriate record.
I'll have to take the advice of our attorney, Mr. Custis.
That's it.
All
Anybody need a break?
I'll entertain a motion for a recess. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Explaining why I'm saying Luke ran for alderman, same purpose, was trying to do everything she could to get his application to the council, because she knew that's where it was headed. We all kind of felt that was the case. She just tonight proved that to be the case. By not producing herself, when the attorneys, from my understanding, told her she should before the several came to council. The other thing is, the reason the ordinances were changed along the way, there were 7 or 8 of them altogether, they were all put in place to stop a business like the one he had here before from coming back here ever again. Mr. Johnston, along the way, has been clearly needing them and advising them to make it easier and easier and easier, putting fewer and fewer obstacles in place for that to happen. That's been going on since 2013. Nobody asked Bill Johnston to change anything. He took it upon himself to ferret out the ordinances that were in the way of Joshua having business here, and has slowly been presenting them to council through the last couple of years as revisions. I know he was. We've seen him in the parking lot after the council meetings where things didn't go so well. He makes a beeline down at the parking lot and sits out there and they converse on it. That's all. Unfortunately. But he had a double take the first time we saw it. We came by with, or he did actually. And came back around again to say, that looks like Bill Johnston's car, and indeed it was. So that's what I've got to do. If Joshua had just come and said, look, I want to open tonight, and let it rest on that, on those merits alone, he probably wouldn't have gotten approved based on the past history before, but at least everything would have been honest and up and up. As it turns out, there's been all of this under the
Well, what I hate is this is today.
Oh, you know, I've been in there before, but I don't think I've ever seen it. No, you can count on Michael to look at it as effectively as he possibly could. The last time I spoke with him, he was actually going to go in favor. That was several months ago.
Several months ago, they wasn't objective. No one listed a single reason why they denied it. They just denied it. Did you hear a reason? I'm serious.
I know my reason. The reason
no, I'm saying, did they give a reason? Did they give a reason? Did you hear them give a reason? I know.
They do in writing. And they will. And it'll be very interesting reading. I believe.
it just troubles me.
We won't lose them. If they do abuse from Bill Johnston, changing the ordinances out from under them, well, that was usurping the law as it was written to prohibit them from having hired him. They hired him back and they shouldn't have. They need to fire him. They really do.
It's council's job.
It is council's job. You're absolutely right on that. It is their job to not let this get to this point.
You're right. It shouldn't have gotten to this point. If we had a proper ARV, it would have been approved months ago. And it wouldn't have been here.
Well,
you're right. We don't have a proper city council. I agree with you there. They said Josh said Laura Parker runs this town, and I told him he was full of shit, and I was
far runs this town.
She sure ran that council. Josh Powell's in his pocket, in her pocket.
Seriously believe that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do believe it.
You really do?
I really believe it. We've been here a long time, since 1959.
I've seen the things.
I've seen it.
He's in the Oval Network and work, and that was the beginning of the end of the Oval Network, thank goodness. I am so disappointed with Ruth right now, I can't begin to tell.
I'm so disappointed with everybody else.
Well, I'm just real tired.
Well, we're done with it, baby. I'm going to resign for Development Authority because I don't think this town is relevant.
If you have a voice,
it's not. What good is it?
Why not?
We don't
Sense is not
it's the thing of judging, not judging people by past sins or his time.
He was gonna do it, you know, in your heart, he was gonna do the same
No,
thing.
we don't.
Have you been inside his place? I've heard people go into the place and the first thing they say.
Huh.
Let's just Joy's right.
Just go ahead and send that out and do it's gonna be in all
You found what now? Rebuild?
but not here. Honey,
It's already 10 minutes. It's gonna happen here, we've never done it.
There's probably a good place for it there.
there is.
There's a lot of areas like south of here that would be great. They wouldn't have traffic problems, wouldn't have any of these issues.
Everywhere but Hapeville, apparently.
Right.
Because we need them. And we need not be so, I mean,
But darling, let me mention this to you, just so, as far as this issue of what he was going to do here, he himself in his own advertising online tied Central Station, as it operated at this point, to the castle. He said, coming soon, we're moving to the castle. He himself said,
I know this was the thing, and the thing is, he didn't. He did not, he had somebody working with him that he thought had his message correct, and that's who hit that on.
I know he blamed it on the young folks and they took it down, but that wasn't until it was Steve Bennett, the one supposedly he let it taken down.
No.
And that's when he got called out. Well, that's what they said in one of the meetings. Steve said that, oh, I found out about that and I shut them down and I told them to stop it right then. But that wasn't until he got called out. I mean, it had been out there for a year and no one had noticed it. There were a couple of ads that I hesitate to show you because they're not really proper for
I've seen.
okay, the ones that said, no window or night, come on down. And then there were others that said, I'm telling you. See, that kind of, I've been to businesses like that. And I'm not saying that I would never go again. I just don't want him to come and do it again where he was and cause all the issues that he caused before. Why not just go sell the place, nothing else, and let something else happen, you know? You might as well. Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, I would like to see personally a jazz club. Have you seen A Star Is Born, 1954, Judy Garland, anything? You know the club that we go to after hours that's playing the rumble music in the background? Constant something. I wish somebody would open that and a piano bar and a restaurant and all that at the same location.
I don't drink to go to.
Yeah.
And I don't, the jazz I wouldn't go for, but now you see some good old-fashioned boogie-woogie, I'd go listen to.
Yeah. Over there.
I had a sister-in-law that played that stuff like crazy. I've got the piano for you.
You got what?
I have an upright piano. Oh, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Cool.
I just hate the prejudice.
I don't see it as with Eric? Yeah, I understand the sense of that. And I don't feel that here, and I certainly hope it's not the undercurrent. We did reach an interesting statistic. Hapeville is only 28% white and 28% black and 37% Hispanic.
I'm good at saying patient come.
So, I mean, how could we
patient come?
Well,
no, it really is. I mean, I've seen it, and I saw it in the voting like years ago, before I met
it's tough.
What's that? I'm ashamed. Josh told me going in, so they would never approve the house. He is right.
Well, of course Joshua would say that. He put in big letters across his business when he closed the first time. Thank you, Councilman Murphy. He's basically got it in for him.
This way, if his license was simply not renewed, and he chose to go to why did he file a lawsuit against the city, against the mayor, and all the council members?
It says in the lawsuit why it was not renewed. It was the same.
He states it in the lawsuit.
Simply that he requested either a permanent license or renewal.
Having a lot of fun. How are you? Very nice meeting
Not Miss Joy.
you. Just Joy.
Joy. Now, you want my real name, Zentera. Zentera.
I'm sorry?
Zentera.
Joy Zentera?
No, Zentera. One word by
That's your whole name,
itself.
Zen?
Stands alone. And that's, you don't know that name. You know Joy.
It's a nice meeting.
I'll explain it to you one day.
I look forward to
Maybe
it.
Halloween.
That should be a clue.
Lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
But that really is my witch number. And I'm a witch because of my healing. I can heal if I start to. We're both healers.
My sister is probably one, and I may have different kinds. She told me a really cool story. She and her husband and another couple living in the San Diego area. They done a town in Mexico. It was a ski trip. I've never been. She said when they got there, the three of them were fine. She got deathly sick and stayed sick the entire trip. She couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was altitude sickness. But there was some, apparently, some repercussions of altitude sickness she didn't experience. As they were going home. Okay, turn it back up. Oh,
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
I'll entertain a motion, we reconvene. Second. All in favor, raise your hand. We're back in session. All right, at this time, we'll take general comments at the end of the meeting, but at this time, we'll take public comments on any agenda items that are on there for tonight. So if anybody has a comment on anything that we're going to take action on tonight, please come forward and make your comment or ask your question. All right, under old business, we looking for some action on ordinance 2016-01. This was the budget amendment that was presented last time. It kind of got left in limbo, or I guess it was the first reading. It was the first reading last time. So I reached out to William and we talked about just adding it back to the agenda tonight since we're having, because there are some strategic goals that we need to talk about at our council planning retreat. The IT upgrades, pay study, et cetera. So is anyone prepared to make a motion on this item tonight or any portion thereof?
I would accept the amendment.
Motion to accept the amendment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Discussion.
Discussion. I do have one question. If we do this, when will they get their bonus?
We would be targeting the end of March.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion or questions?
I have, and it was an item, HR employee pay study. HR employee pay study, $20,000. And I think you had, at a meeting or so ago, mentioned that this was somebody that you were going to contract at $20 an hour?
No, well, yes, and no.
Okay.
What,
That's 1,000 hours to study 140 employees.
What office are you running for next?
The way this would work, if council authorized the funding, would I have someone who's qualified to do the study to get it started, and he's agreed to do that at $20 an hour. I would move forward on that effort. Then I would go forward and get a qualified contractor to take his information and all the information we gather in the process and come back with a study, a complete study similar to the other, I think it was the Archer study. You know, a proper study, but we could, what I would do is utilize this individual to jumpstart the data gathering process so that we can move quicker and faster on all of this, because there's a timing element in terms of bringing this together at the time that we would be making budget decisions. So that's why I'm trying to.
Will you check with GMA to see if this study is not available already, job descriptions and salary comparisons for all the cities in GMA?
Yes, ma'am, that'd be part of the work that the consultant would.
You don't think that would be enough?
I'm sorry?
You don't think that in itself would be enough, that's free for us to look at?
No, I do not. I think that we're going to need someone to pull this information together so that we can have it in the right formats and the right the way you can do the comparative analysis between the positions. I would be happy to reach out to GMA, but I don't think they have a free service that's going to cover us.
Well, they've got a lot of data compiled.
Yeah, it's already compiled.
Right, but I'm going to need somebody to jump out there, get it moving, get it pulled together so that then I can, get a group to come in and do the right study.
So what data are we going to do? Are we just like a request, like open records request to other cities asking what they pay this person? Like, what is?
He would get on the phone. Jennifer and I have come up with an initial list, which I would share with council and make sure we were in agreement. So it would be cities like Morrow, East Point, College Park, Clayton County, Fulton County, Smyrna, a couple of others, Fairburn. Try to get some local benchmarks that work for our market. Take a look at maybe some of the places that our employees have left.
Yes, that's the right number to do.
Morrow being one. And just make sure that we have a good listing so that we consistently check the data of those jurisdictions as a benchmark. And then obviously if GMA has anything to add, we would include that. And then we would make sure that it's all put together in the right format so that we know that we're comparing apples to apples when it comes to pricing a position. Because when you do, let's just say, a public works position, just because you have a public works worker job description, in one city those duties may be one thing, in another city they may be slightly different, so you have to take all those factors into account.
So it's classification as well.
It's classification and making sure that you have done your homework and you are actually benchmarking the right positions, and that the data is organized in a way that you know you're comparing it to an equal position.
So if people get pay raises, we have the money to pay it. If we do this study and it says, all right, if you are in public works doing this job, you deserve a 10% pay raise to compete with everybody else. Like, I don't want to do this study and then it'd be like, oh, sorry, we did the study, we can't do anything about it.
Which is what happened with Archer, I believe.
Which happened with the Archer study, yeah, because the recession hit about the time we got the Archer study.
Right.
I just want to make, I'm all down with
I think that was about $40,000.
But I didn't understand it to be automatic raises. I thought it was to be justification of why certain positions had certain values and maybe others.
That is
This sounds odd, to have a different value.
That is correct, and if you carefully read my budget guidance memo,
It was through.
It actually spoke to that point of how we might have to phase it, but that we, staff, when preparing the budget, are going to cut everywhere we can. We're going to find revenue sources wherever we can. We're going to find efficiencies wherever we can to be able to accumulate the dollars necessary to come forward at the end of the budget process with options to this council and get you all to basically direct us or guide us on which options make the most sense to be able to pay for the pay raises. Typically, I don't even discuss pay raises until after the operational budget is set. However, it was my clear sense that council wanted to proceed with rewarding the employees any way it could. And so we're going to be busily about that business of giving you the best options we can on how you can do that. But I have to have the data in order to do that.
But I think we've got to look at some longer-term strategic plans, because we have some development coming in there that's going to potentially change the need for staff, either on a contract basis or a permanent basis. And, you know, while we're in a less than desirable revenue position now, we're not going to stay in that position.
Right.
Things are turning a corner. And I agree with what folks and us as council have said. Don't spend every extra dime we find.
Right.
So, I mean, if it's y'all's desire to hold this down for a little while, William's just a recommender, and he's delivering the basket. It's our goal to put whatever eggs we want to put in that basket. So it's just something for us. He is bringing these as recommendations, and it's up to us to talk about and look at. But it's more, like I say, and Diane, you and I both mentioned the Archer study, and it was a great. It's just gaming. I mean, it'd be a good start.
Well, I think some of the job descriptions are still
I think
appropriate.
so.
The city clerk is still a city clerk,
Right.
and, you know, fireman's still a fireman, so some of that is still.
HR is still HR.
HR is still HR, but my preference would be to scratch that whole $20,000 off and let the HR, the human resource position have, for the fiscal year, $16,000, let that be part of their starting thing, what they're gonna do.
That's y'all's choice. I was just trying to.
Well, we've got a line item for $16,000.
I'm just trying to move
In
faster.
HR, I was gonna say this, leave the 20,000 in the pot and let the HR person that we hire to start with that project. Calling GMA and looking at that to see what's free.
Probably some more imperative projects, but have that on their list.
Yeah, yeah.
That's definitely what I was gonna do.
But $20 an hour, and have a jump start on it.
Well, can we do that in $1,000 worth? Can we do that in 500 hours? That's the right math.
Well, I'm assuming the 20 is your most, and
That's an
Yeah.
absolute.
and if HR can start it, and it can be done for a lot less, I will assume you will do it for less.
Absolutely.
Why don't we just lay that 20,000 aside
I
and
agree
revisit
with
it
that.
after the HR?
Yeah. After HR person gets started.
And William, a couple of things that I was hearing, when you talked about cities, they were cities that are close to us, and I understand geographic, we're metropolitan Atlanta, but also the size of those cities and their budgets would have some bearing on what they can afford to pay their people.
That's correct.
So I don't, what a formula they must have for this. I hate to see it.
But the converse of that, Michael, is a city with 6,500 people in rural Georgia.
Right.
So hard to get comfortable
With us not being a metropolitan, with them not being a metropolitan.
There's just one Hapeville.
So that's why it's more complicated than just
Oh, it's very complicated.
looking at what other cities are doing. You gotta find comparable cities that level in service, population, and then, we wouldn't have to have 2 fire stations if we didn't have a railroad track running right down the middle of town. We wouldn't have to have the intensive police coverage that we have if we weren't at the front door.
Next to Zone 3.
Right next to Zone 3 of the city of Atlanta. So there's some comps there that make us unique in a city of 6,500 people.
The other question was, your person was gonna start the work and turn it over to someone else, they specialize.
Myself and the HR person.
Okay, so I guess that was my question, is that, and it ties into Diane's, how many hours do you anticipate he would need? And, I don't know, and then he's turning over to you in HR. It
Yes.
wasn't, because I somewhere got in it, there was another organization or something that was gonna analyze it, but talking about within staff, that's good.
Yes, it would be a staff effort. The 20,000 is a maximum allocation available for that effort. Obviously, if it costs less, we do it for less. I was putting dollars in there so that we can move quickly. If you'd rather just, hold back, we can do that. I'm just concerned about the timing of having all of this pulled together by June when we need to make decisions.
Yeah, because he is headlong in budget time.
I'm moving now.
It won't be long before it's that
I saw
time.
that
been batting around the HR study, so does anybody want to amend the motion to reflect anything on that, or you want to proceed with the motion as it is?
I mean, can I say, let's make that, the HR study $5,000? Is that part of the discussion, or we change the whole thing?
Did you make the original, did she make
I
the
made the
original?
original motion.
Okay.
I will amend it to make it 5,000.
Okay, Ruth's amended her motion, and who seconded? Josh.
I amend my second.
Okay, all right, so we have an amended motion, amended second.
Do you think 5's enough? Like, I think,
That should get,
That's 250 hours for 143 employees.
Again, just to clarify, what I was talking about is having this individual start the effort of data collection.
yeah.
To benchmark the right communities, understanding the complexity of it, and then turn that data over to a consultant who would do a proper study. Now, if...
The consultant is our HR person? Or another person we'd have to hire?
Another consultant who does that for a living. I mean, there are people that do these things for a living. This is what they do, and they do it correctly. So you can do it that way, or we can just cut back on that and just do data collection and an internal evaluation and present you with the information. That may be good enough for you. I just want to get the effort started, because what's going to happen is exactly what Josh was pointing out. Is that we're going to be heading down this road. We're going to have the budget modules and decisions ready in terms of staff raises and so forth like that, but I'll have two problems. Number one, I won't know how much to recommend. And number two, I'm not sure that I have the data I need to justify the actual allocation. In other words, it's market driven. We're in competition for staff. We're in competition for skills and expertise. And if we're not willing to pay the price of the market, then that's just going to mean that our person will leave. And that's what we've been seeing. So if I don't have that information to make that determination, it's going to put us at a disadvantage. But can we try and do it internally on the cheap? Sure. But the way I recommend to you to do it, because we have the 20,000 available, is to do it that way. But if you would rather do 5 or 10 and then put the rest in savings and do it on an internal evaluation, I'm okay with that. I just need to move quickly because of the timing of the budget.
William, will you think if it were 5,000, your person would still start the process and
Yes.
see where we could go?
Yes.
And then we can make another
We
decision.
can
if
make a
we-
decision, we can do a future amendment.
Yeah, I could bring you back an update. Yes, ma'am.
Is that, 5,000 would be 6 40-hour weeks?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
what I calculated too.
Yes.
And I'm assuming hopefully about the retreat, maybe have a sort of an update where it stands. Depends on what the retreat is, I know.
So, if it's merit-based pay, merit-based pay raises, maybe give everybody a base pay rate, and you give each department head a percentage or a dollar amount which you can increase people's pay. You have evaluations, you do well, you get more money. If you don't do well in your evaluations, you don't get as much money. That way we don't have to do this study, we just have to get in place the evaluations.
Oh,
which,
have performance reviews.
yeah, so we have to have performance reviews, you have to have.
That's certainly your option, but it could be a lot more expensive than doing it on a market basis. And you could end up overpaying, but that is your that is your problem.
I'm comfortable with the $5,000 start.
Yeah.
Just see what we can accomplish, and if it's moving in the right direction and really making things clear, maybe invest more in there, or maybe that'll get the job done.
I can bring you back an update in a couple of months.
All right, so there's a motion and a second on the floor to approve the budget amendment with reducing the study to $5,000.
And if anything goes where?
Yeah, that was my question.
Goes back in the pot.
15 would go into the savings reserve.
We'll be at 100,000 then.
Is there any further discussion on this item? There being none, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is consideration action to select a facilitator for the council retreat. I think we all looked through the packet that was sent out. This will be the second time this has come up because again, for timing wise, we're trying to get that lined up. We'd like to have that retreat by the end of February if possible. So has anyone got any idea what you'd like to do on this item?
You had that look.
I'm just a stick in the mud on this.
I would probably say the cheaper the better.
Well, what I thought, since this is the first one in this council, that perhaps we could go with a really cheap, and because William has nothing else to do, he could maybe go through, talk to each council member, see what we need to discuss, and let's just have it, department heads, him and us, and not have the facilitator this time, and keep it very cheap, and see how that works. If it doesn't, then we can revisit something. Next year we'll know better.
Well, I'll disagree, but I'll let council speak first, if y'all can maybe say something like that.
Well, how did we do it last year?
Department heads and council, and the year before.
And I don't know what came up about.
We sat around and talked about stuff, nobody ever wrote out an action plan.
I think that's like, you know, we sit there, we have great ideas.
Okay,
But it wasn't too long after that that the city manager was no longer within the city, so that was part of the problem.
And one of the things I think William does an excellent job about, and I really like, is this memo after the council member that says this meetings, this is what we've done, this is what we discussed, this is what we will do. I think he might actually give us an action plan. We might not like it, but we might get to it.
Okay, go.
I was going to say, I'll throw out the $700 candidate who is experienced as a facilitator. It is by far, I'd like to offer out as the candidate for our facilitator, the one for $700. She's done this before. I think part of her statement was she would interview each of the council members before what would we like to see, what are our objectives. She puts that into how she runs the day and then gives us a written report at the end of it. And I think the $700, shoot, we could take it out of that 15 we just saved.
I know that's insane.
So that would be mine. And I think it's similar to what Ruth is saying, since it's been 12 or 15 years since we've had a facilitator. Let's start with the $700 facilitator and see if we get anything that's usable out of the $700
I would rather have a
facilitator.